Welcome back. Hey, Technical Brad here. Today we are looking at the fuel pump off of the David Brown Select-O-Matic 880. This fuel pump was also used on the 780 and the 770, all of which had the 3-cylinder diesel engines. And what the fuel pump did is it was considered a lift pump. And as we look at our diagram here, the lift pump comes off our fuel tank, is connected to the lift pump, which then pressurizes the fuel up into the fuel filter system, and then on into the injector pump, which then takes it over to the injectors and fires it into the engine. This is the original lift pump. I did purchase a replacement back when I restored it in 21-22. That pump has worked fine, but we have this one, and we're just going to talk a little bit about it, take it apart, see some of the internal components on it and how it operates. So on the end of it, and this is mounted on the right side of the block under the fuel filters and the fuel system. Here we have the inlet that comes from the fuel tank, a glass sediment bowl, and what that will do is collect the bigger pieces of sediment, and they will be trapped in this bowl. There's a screen up under here for the return into the pump so the particles can't get out of the bowl and further into the pump. Inside the pump here is a diaphragm, and we have one here. This is one of the old ones. This is the top part of the diaphragm. This is where the fuel would be. The bottom part of it, there's actually a spring in here, and then this kind of a T-looking fitting here hooks into the handle, so you can operate it manually. And that is how you would vent the system whenever you remove anything and you get air in the system. You can pump that manually to get the air out. The pump is operated via a push rod, which we have one here. This is the original one. If you can see, it's worn a little bit right in there. And this end is worn right across there. This is the end that was on the fuel pump. The other end goes through the block, and this rides on the camshaft. And there is a lobe on the camshaft that this rides on. As the camshaft spins around, it would push it in and out of the block. That movement is applied back here to the lever on the pump, which causes it to go in and out. That's what operates the diaphragm inside of here. So as this diaphragm is going basically up and down inside the pump, and it's not much, but it does move a bit. At first, when it goes down, it pulls the fuel in from the tank into the chamber here. There's a check valve right in here. This valve only allows the fuel to travel in. Once the diaphragm starts to push back up, this valve will shut, so that the fuel can't go back into our bowl or the tank. If you didn't have the check valve, this thing would move up and down and the fuel would just kind of go back and forth and it wouldn't go anywhere. So they have a check valve here. There's also a check valve inside here for the outlet. It does the same thing. When this is pulling down to draw the fuel in from the tank, this one's open and this one's closed so that the fuel can't be pulled back from the filter system. The only real issues I had with the fuel pump is this diaphragm. And what happens on the diaphragm, if we look right in there, there's a tear in the diaphragm. And this is a 2-layer diaphragm, but it gets a tear in it. Now this is the bottom side of it. This is the non-fuel side. This is the fuel side up here. And consequently, what happens, at first, you start leaking a little bit of fuel. And that eventually gets to, and basically you're tearing the top layer here. You can see a crack right in there. That's the first to go, and the fuel will go in between the layers and actually start coming out around the housing here, all the way around this part here. And so that happens first, and you get fuel leakage on it. But then once it goes all the way through, it'll actually start pulling air in from the bottom here. And once it pulls air into the system, well, you're your DOA. The thing will shut down because you get air in the injectors and it no longer runs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this thing apart a little bit. What we have are these 5 screws up here. Or yeah, 2, 4, 6 screws. And you will undo these screws, and then the 2 halves separate right along here, and then that's your diaphragm. You also have the sediment bowl here. You'll undo that. That is the bowl. And as we look in here, you have a screen all the way around here. This screen is what prevents the particles that are drawn in through this center hole from the tank and that settle inside the bowl. It prevents them from being pulled up into the pump because of that screen. So as we dismantle this thing, I got a magnetic screwdriver here. You're going to break these loose, kind of a crisscross pattern here a little bit. My screwdriver is magnetic, so it's fighting me to get on the heads of the screws here. And I hear it peeling away already. And it's not a bad idea to apply a little pressure on it, because like I say, this is spring loaded and you want to be careful. There's one screw. So now this should come apart like so. The top half pulls away. There's our bottom half with our diaphragm in there. Set that down. Still has a little bit of fuel in it. So now in here, these are the check valves. There's one here and one here. They're both the same valve. This is one side of it and that's the other side of it. And if you push on that, you see how that opens. Maybe we can't see that, but see how the pencil will go in there like that. This side it won't do that. This side will shut on you. But that is the 2 check valves that allow the fuel in this case coming from the bowl. This one opens in to draw it in. And then when the diaphragm starts coming up, it pushes back down and closes this off. And then this one opens and allows the fuel to come out here in the front of the pump, which goes up into the filter system. And then the diaphragm is spring loaded. So we unsnap it and we lift up on it, and there it is. And then we have the spring. And this spring returns the diaphragm, so it keeps it moving. And then there's a little bit of a seal here, which looks like it's pretty much bad, probably. And that keeps dirt and stuff. Now you're going to get oil into this. There's actually a hole. There's a hole here for the push rod, which would set on that, coming out of the block. But there's also a hole down here because this has oil that goes in on this mechanism, and then it drains back out at the bottom here, back into the sump of the engine. And then that pushes in and out, and that's what operates inside here to pull down on the diaphragm, which the diaphragm is connected to that shaft via that fitting there. So we just got this thing to pop. Now what I had to do, and we're talking about our little check valves. The one over here was already loose. And so what I did is I took my utility knife and I just kind of cut. You can kind of see down in here where they stamped it, the housing. So they fit these in here and then they stamped this to mushroom it over. This one had some kind of seal on it, it seems like, or sealer. And we just got it to pop out of there. And what I did on it is I ran hot water on it. You can see the hot water down in there. And I heated the whole thing up. And they had some kind of sealer on there, it looks to me like, as we set this down here. we look right along in here, almost like a kind of like a JB Weld type stuff on that. Oop. And so there again, my screwdriver's not magnetic enough, is it? So there again, I heated it up and I took my utility knife and I dug around there a bit to get that out of the aluminum. Now the rebuild kit comes with the new diaphragm and your new check valves, as well as the gasket for the bowl and the mount it back on to the engine here. So all that comes with the kit that we purchased. But getting those things out was a little tough, So we're gonna take this over here and clean it up a little bit, and then we will come back. So they're both, the new ones and the original ones are coming in at the same size as far as our distance across out here. So that's good, that's what we want. Now, shut that off. The new ones come with a gasket as well. And the gasket fits behind the check valve. If we put it in there like so. The original one did not have that. But the issue that we have with it, particularly over here, that just doesn't, I mean, that's not going to stay in there. That is so loose that it's just, no matter which way it goes, and it has to go the right way to work. But yeah, that's that hole screws, and that's the hole we had originally. I had to dig that out because it had like a JB Weld type material in there. So I'm thinking that perhaps this thing was machined wrong down in here. This hole was bigger than this hole, and this one seemed to be just crimped in. It's more of a press fit to fit the valve in there. And as we see it, it just kind of rocks in there. If we get it, can't even get it started halfway decent. Like so. See now there, it fell in there, but it's not gonna stay in there. I could probably pull it out with the pliers. So we may want to go ahead and use the JB Weld on both of them. Just to I got a couple different versions here. Of course, we have our traditional JB Weld. You have your two compounds, you mix them together, and then it eventually firms up. We also have steel stick. Now this one I've used before. And we have to cut a piece of it off. And as we see, it's black in the middle and gray on the outside. Those are the two compounds like you would find in the two tubes that you would have to use, only this is in a stick. You cut that off and you kind of knead that together so that you can utilize that as far as gluing it in. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and break for a second here, and then when we come back, we will go ahead and do that. So let's cut a little bit of this off. Take the plastic protector off of it. And then we're just going to knead this together. Try to get a little bit of this in here. And what I'm going to do, now that I got this all kneaded together, and see it's all turned black, or gray has disappeared, so and yeah, that's what you're looking for on the steel stick anyway. And we'll kind of roll this out a little bit. And I'm just going to break some of it off down inside the hole here. Now we can always crimp this again. Like I say, this was originally crimped in, and it did wiggle loose. One of the times that I rebuilt this pump, which was put a new diaphragm in it, it was loose on there, and I did crimp it in, if you will. But I don't know if we can see that. We just have it right around the edge here. We got a little bit, not all the way around, but around it enough to hopefully seal that thing in there. And then it goes with the flat side up and the round side in. And a socket here. We're gonna use a socket as a mandrel to put on here. Okay. Now, as we see, we've got him seated down in there. And if we push on that, the valve opens, which is what we want. So I think we're good on that. So now we'll do the other one. This stuff's starting to harden up already. It's hot too, you can feel it. So you don't have much work time with this. Of course, I'm old and my hands don't work as well as they used to. So we're going to take this. Now it goes with the silver dome part up. And really, you just push it in there. So what we'll do is we'll let this set up. I'm scraping the excess out of there. And so that's what we end up with. Take a few of the debris off of her. Boy, stuff just sticks to everything. But yeah, we got it. Now we have both of our valves set up in there, or put in there. We'll let that set up, and then we'll be able to, we'll come back and put the diaphragm part of it in. So now we have to install the diaphragm. Now, all of the other times that I've rebuilt this pump, the only thing I got was the diaphragm. And that was from the Case dealership. That was the only part that they showed available for it. And so you have your spring. Now, I have seen some kits do have new springs with them. We did not have that with ours. Not sure why, but that's just the way that it is. And we have our screws here. These are cheese head screws, they call them. Right there. Here in America, cheese. So we're going to go ahead and reassemble this. First of all, I'm going to show you the inside now. We've got a seal in here. And I got this. This was stamped around the edges here, so I went ahead and stamped that back out. And we're going to try to, okay, pop the ring out of there. And this is kind of a retainer cap that holds the seal in here, which we have right here. Go ahead and wipe this stuff off here. Now this is the seal that seals the mechanism down inside here. Let me wipe this out a bit. If we look down in there, we see the activating mechanism right here. Now what happens is the T end of this will fit into that. Lock into that. I'll tell you what, this has been... So what happens is that's what activates the diaphragm, and it's going to lock into this like so. And then that's, see, now that's anchored so that as the pump moves, then the diaphragm goes up and down. The push rod will activate it, making it go up and down. Like so. Anyway, That's the internal mechanisms on there. And then of course this fits through there. And that's supposed to help seal, you know, the oil and stuff out of here. Obviously that's a loose fit. It's even cracked. You see we got a pretty good crack in it right there. So, yeah, this seal would be nice if they had a seal like that for it. I've never seen one in any of the parts places. But that's, I wanted to show that. And then, of course, you've got oil that's going to get back in here. As we look down in here, you can kind of see how it's lit up in there. And that's what gives you access for the oil. Comes in from the push rod up here, and then of course it drains back down the bottom. But see how that's all kind of opened up in there. Zoomed out a little bit here. Hopefully you'll be able to see me. I'm pulling this up close to me, and we're getting out of our camera range. So anyway, just wipe a little bit of the debris out of that seat down in there. And we'll go ahead and put our little rubber seal in there. We got the retaining cap. I'll go ahead and wipe that off as well. I never noticed any oil leaking out of this particular piece. That doesn't mean that it didn't, I guess, but then we'll push that down in there. Give it a few taps, compress it down in there a little bit. Of course, we'll be careful with this. You don't want to break it. So we got him put back in there. Okay, so the spring is going to seat down in the bottom of the housing here. And it's also going to seat into the cup of the bottom of the diaphragm. This is the fuel side, and this is the bottom, the oil side, the engine side, I guess we would call it. And we're going to start this thing. We find our orientation tab, which is right here. And we should be able to start it down here, but that's not going to work because that's the orientation on this thing is off. So we need it to go in. We need our shaft, our T-fitting here. We need it to be in parallel this way, so that it fits into the activating mechanism, and then we give it a turn to lock it in. So that's what we're going to attempt to do here. Way down in there.
Well, maybe I should just edit this as this is how you take it apart. There's no way to put the damn thing back together. Ah, shit. So with our new diaphragm, we've got it in here, and I went ahead and put the screws in. This is the upper part of the fuel pump, the housing. I think this whole pattern, or bolt pattern around the outside, and I think the overall diameter of this diaphragm is too big for this pump, because once these screws are lined up here, now when I inserted it into the lower half and tried putting the two halves together, then these bolts didn't line up. They pushed out too far away from the housing. So I think that this diaphragm, this new diaphragm, is just too big of a diameter for this pump. Once you get it back together, that it will not, you can't get it to bolt together. So what we're going to do, I'm going to throw that down. There's really no way to, there's just no way really to get these things to level out to look at them. But we're going to go ahead and install the original one, and at least you'll know how to do that. Now, by the orientation in the manual, we have a little index mark right there. We got 2 holes, and then we've got this tab that's stapled together. The picture in the book shows 3 holes, so this tab would actually be over here. So the orientation of this thing is pretty much off scale. But what you want to do is when you insert this, you want to insert this so that we are parallel here to the front and back of the pump. And I'm talking about our flat piece here. And that will insert down in there. And then once you get it clicked into the mechanism, and you can feel that, then it's going to hold in place. And then it's going to operate properly. But in order to do that, we need to put the spring in here. And so once you put the spring in, now, yeah, you're getting a lot of spring pressure, and that fits into the base here, and it fits into this, the diaphragm up here. And then we're going to want to push that down in there. And you can feel it click into place, right like that. And then that's going to orientate us with our screws, and then that moves up and down. And then you want to take your top half, and the orientation on it, now this is the outlet here that goes to the fuel filters. So obviously it needs to face out the front of the unit. So we're just going to line these up, and we'll put a screw in here. Just a matter of putting all 6 of the screws, getting them started in there. And then we'll tighten them down closer to the housing. And then once you get it down here close to the housing, you're going to want to pull the handle up, and that's going to pull the diaphragm down. And when you do that, then you can tighten the screws up. And there again, you kind of want to go a crisscross pattern, but you want to keep pressure on that handle to hold the diaphragm in the down position while you tighten these screws up, these cheese head screws. Like so. And there we go. We'll just give that one more torque around it there. And voila. And there we go. And then that's together. We can hear it moving. You can feel it blowing air out of there, so it's drawing in and then blowing it back out. If you need to remove the interior mechanisms on this, they are basically stamped, it looks like, into place right here on either side. So that could be drilled out. There's a cross shaft. Looks like an alignment tab's on there. And the interior guts will come out of that. You know, there's really no reason to, if that wore out, then that would be the reason, I guess, to take that out. But I've never seen any parts to where you can replace that anyway. So that's basically it for the pump. Rebuilding the David Brown 3-cylinder diesel engine fuel pump.